Welcome back to Power CEOs, Truth Behind the Business. We are going to shift gears a bit. And yes, you guessed it, it is time for our AI topic of the week. Okay, we've talked about AI a whole heck of a lot. I've brought in a bunch of guests for you who are experts in the space. And we have back with us today, Dr. Alan Badeau. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Jen. It's great to be here.
I am really excited today to dive in because I've been looking at the news the past, say, 4 or 5 weeks, and now AI, which has been such a buzz, has some negative press. I'm seeing, oh, there's these barriers to AI integration. Oh, we had a failed integration. So there's a lot of kind of chatter in that space. And I wanted to kind of dive a little deeper in that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that sounds good. It's a big problem. I'm seeing it all the time.
So one of the things I saw, and don't ask me my source, I was reading through all kinds of things before the show, is that 43% of IT professionals lack confidence in meeting AI's data needs. So how do we as entrepreneurs, as executives, think about overcoming the data challenges that require us to really think about our data governance strategies? What does that look like for us so we can be prepared and our internal teams will feel more confident?
Well, I think you just hit the nail right on the head. Data governance strategy. If you ask most companies, they don't have one. That's a huge problem. They don't have a data ops playbook. They don't have that governance strategy. They don't understand that just because they have a lot of data does not mean that they are AI ready. That's a huge problem. And so, oftentimes it falls on the CIO or the CTO to go grab all that data, go look at it, make sure that they've got enough of it. And then when they try to apply it, or your machine learning guys try to apply it to, some of the things that they're trying to solve, it's not going to work. And it's a big problem. It's been a problem for years since we've started, with software development and, with the agile piece. But now it's just, really under the magnifying glass now.
So let's dive a little deeper into that, if you will. Since so many companies don't have these strategies in place, tell me, what is a data governance strategy? Let's just break that down into nuts and bolts for everybody watching so they can start thinking about, okay, how do I start this process, or how do I develop this for my company?
Yeah, the easiest thing is you really have to look at it from 5 different viewpoints. The first one is, how are you going to acquire your data? Is it customer data? Is it you're going to go source it? Is it social media data? It really has to align to what your goals are. Because if you don't have a strategy around that, just getting a whole bunch of data is not going to solve your problem. But then you've got to think about, okay, how am I going to store it? How am I going to make sure that it's clean so that, I can take that next step? Moving data around is extraordinarily expensive. It's cheaper than it used to be, but it's still expensive. And so if you don't store it in the right place at the right time so you can use it to do all these things, it's going to be a problem. And then cleaning the data is the same thing. As you are ingesting that data, you have to make sure that there's a mechanism so it is clean. And by clean, I mean, if you take a picture of a news magazine and you're only interested in one article, but you go through and you've got all the page numbers in there, you've got other pictures in there, that is pollution to your data, and it's got to go. You got to get rid of it. And then, after you've cleaned the data, then you got to figure out how you're going to process it. Where are you going to process it at? Is it in the cloud? Are you going to do it on your laptop? Probably not. You're going to do it somewhere that is in an environment that, one, it's safe, 2, it's cost effective, and then 3, it's got enough compute power to do what you want it to do. Because if you don't have those things lined up, it's not going to work. And then the last piece is, how are you going to use it and get the data, get the data that you're generating out to, the public, or however you're going to use it, so that you can actually, get some ROI out of that. People have a misconception that, the AI is the most important piece of any sort of job. Oh, I got to have the AI. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. But what they fail to realize is that the data exhaust that you are generating as you're computing is the most valuable piece of bits that you can get your hands on. That is the number one thing that you should want to own. You have to own the exhaust, because by doing that, you can do analysis, you can do deep dives, you can use AI to look at it and really get metrics out of it, pull all that stuff together. And if you're not doing one of those 5 things that I just mentioned, you're going to have issues. I don't know if it's going to be in the front or the back. It just depends. But you have to do all 5 of those very well in order to say that you've got a good data plan.
And when I think about this, you said something. You busted the myth that it's the AI that's the most important piece, and you said the data that comes out of that is the most important piece. And I've likened it to, it's the next oil, or it's the next gold. Like, it's the gold standard. When we own quality data that is really useful, that's going to be the currency of business, I believe, in the future, because there's so many, restrictions on acquisition of data. It's getting harder and harder, costlier and costlier for us to acquire it. And so what we have and what we own becomes so much more valuable. So thank you for sharing your insights. And for those of you who are watching, I just want to kind of high level go about this. If you are thinking about an AI integration, AI readiness is everything. And we just talked about data governance strategies. How are you acquiring your data? Where's it coming from? How are you storing your data? Is your data quality clean? How are we ingesting it to make sure that it stays quality data? And then how am I going to use it? And what is that business use case? All of these things are so incredibly important. Thank you for sharing those with us today. And I'm going to ask a follow-up question, because this is a lot. It's heavy. It's stuff that I'm an entrepreneur. I don't like to think about this stuff. And quite frankly, I outsource all of this because I don't even want to have to manage it within my organization. It doesn't make sense for the companies that I'm in currently. So if we're an entrepreneur in that space, talk to us about how we can find resources externally. If we're going to outsource some of this, what do we look for in a company that we're going to outsource, maybe building our data governance strategy?
Yeah, you really have to look for, experts that have, understand, the entire data ops process, especially if you're using any sort of data that is PII, if it's, any sort of other personal information, if it can, even social media data, you want to be careful about. And then the other thing is it proprietary? Because if it's proprietary, then it's still, it has to be handled in a special way. Otherwise, you're going to have some issues. And so you've got to really check into, folks' background on what sort of experience they have handling large data. And we're not talking about 500 Word documents. We're talking about terabytes and terabytes of data. If you have, enough of that, then your risk for data leaks, or I don't know how many companies in the last year have had hacks and issues around that, but those are things that you have to worry about, and you've really got to get somebody that is familiar with that.
Yeah, and from the business side of things, like, I just want to make a point to everyone too. As we dive deeper into this, it is so important that we protect ourselves with the right insurance policies, because cybersecurity is a thing, just as you said, like these data leaks, these hacks, all of these issues are coming more and more prevalent. So be sure that if you're going to start this process and you're going to go to a vendor for this or outsource this, make sure you're already protected from your end of things. And then don't allow those companies that come in to pass their liability onto you. Make sure that they are insured. Make sure that they have all the licensure and everything that they need so that you protect yourself. So we're getting towards the end of the segment, and I wanted to ask you what do you have, or how can you be reached, or how do you want to be reached if people would like to learn more about this or would like to take some steps forward in this process?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way is to go to my LinkedIn account. They can find me on there, or they can go to my website. It's alanbadeau.ai. And I've got some information up there on cybersecurity, activities, things you need to pay attention to. Even just basic things like don't be the weakest link in the chain when you click on an email and open up your entire infrastructure for hackers to get into. So there's some things up there that will help some folks, and then they can watch my show on Now Media on Wednesday nights at 6 p.m. Central Time.
Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, I believe you have an AI readiness assessment that you do. Can you speak a little bit to that?
I do. We are, really trying to help businesses, accelerate their adoption. We don't, I've seen it a ton of times. Jen, I know you've seen it a ton of times. We are looking at ways that we can make sure that one, companies are ready to really embrace AI and use it the right way, but then two, they can accelerate that return on investment that they're always trying to do. And it's you've got to be strategic. You've got to have a cookie cutter process, a way that you can just go through, stamp it, and then run with it. And that's what we're going to bring to a lot of small businesses.
Fantastic. So if you're watching, be sure to reach out to Dr. Badeau. He is a true expert in his space. Thank you for joining me again today, Alan.
Thanks, Jen.
And we are going to have to take a brief break, but stick around. You're not going to want to miss what's next after these messages.